Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today we're doing another indie horror spotlight. Today, I have with us a filmmaker. He has a new horror anthology coming out, and it's called Artifacts of Fear. I have my man Rusty Apper with us today. Rusty, welcome to the Horror Realm.
Hey, good to see you. Thanks for having me, Travis. It's a pleasure to be here.
So the pleasure's mine, man. The pleasure's all mine.
Cool.
So tell us a little bit about Artifacts of Fear.
Well, it's a horror anthology. It kind of has three stories that don't really intertwine. They're kind of separate. They're their own kind of thing, and they're all how should I put it? Married together by a wraparound. Which is kind of like set in like this antique store and stuff like that. So it's a little bit like Stephen King, Needful Things, and then there's a bit of Goosebumps in there, and and it's really like a love letter to what you would imagine would be a buffet of like true horror fan stuff. So there's like a little bit of Hammer horror in there. There's a little bit like that Sam Raimi vibe. There's a bit of Carpenter, or at least like I tried to do that. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
I love it. Now, is it harder making anthology with a bunch of short stories than compared to making one full length film?
Well, that's a really funny question, because I was actually in production of a film before Artifacts called Discarnate, and we kind of got about 90% done, and I moved house, and basically some stuff was stolen from the van, and that included a box full of hard drives which had all of my work, old scripts, and like probably about 15 years worth of like my movie making lineage on there. So so when I'd finished crying about that and tearing my hair out, which is why
I can imagine.
But then I kind of thought, wow, I can do anything I want now. I don't have to finish that movie. So I tried to like think about it in a positive way, rather than being like, oh, fucking hell, you know what I mean? And at first, I'll be honest, I was very nervous about the idea of making another feature. And the whole reason why I did an anthology really was not only because I had all these bits and pieces of stories that weren't quite permeated enough to be features, but also it was like, well, in my mind, I'm making 3 short films, which psychologically was just a little bit more able for me to handle at that point. I won't say like my mental health was in tatters, but I wasn't in the best place at the time, and I think the idea of like, let's make another feature was a little bit scary. So I was like, well, I can just make one short and enjoy it, and then I can make another short and enjoy that, and then another, and then we'll put it together. And it was I think making a movie is hard. I don't think it changes. I think it's tricky regardless. I don't think you're ever going to be free of those terrifying, awful things that seem to happen on every movie, whether you've got a massive budget. Yeah, exactly. Whether you've got a massive budget or not, really. Because I always think about like The Big Time, and people always ask like, what do you think would change? How would you do things differently? Like, or how would you do it now if you were working with a giant crew? And I thought, well, I'm still going to run into the human condition. Do you know what I mean? I'm still going to have the same core issues. The only difference is there'll be a bunch of money to throw at things, which which doesn't always solve things either. So yeah, filmmaking is always tough. I think at the time making an anthology was easier for me in my head. Now, yeah, I would do it again, because I think you can go halfway through it and then you've got so much of it put together that you can actually see. So if you finish 2 shorts and you've got 1 to go, that doesn't feel like an unfinished movie. And if the shit hits the fan, you can always do like the last resort of like, you know what, I'll just put the shorts out.
The shorts out.
Yeah, because at least you have that option. But you can't go, I'll just put out half this film.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to see a half-made movie.
It must be like an instant reward. You finish a short, at least you're like, oh, at least I got something done, something's completed. Compared to if you're 25% in on a movie, you're like, fuck, I'm nowhere close to completing this.
Yeah, you do get those moments with features that are all, one narrative, where you're like, God, I'm so far from the finishing line. Do you know what I mean? And you feel like you've been going forever and you're still so far away. But that's kind of, You know, that's the painful part. You know, it's kind of like when you decide to grow your hair super long, it just seems to look crap for ages. And
Yes.
then you start to make a bit of progress. You're like, okay, it's coming together now. But yeah, it's very difficult. You know, it is very difficult. And I must say, controversially, and I wouldn't say this to disparage anyone or knock anyone, but I personally, I'll be brutally honest, I think short films are a waste of time. I'm only interested in features. It's just the way that this one came together. It was kind of, you know, you are making short films. I mean, you can always say, hey, every scene in the movie, I'm making a short film, but it doesn't really work like that. So I'm always more interested in a feature, you know, because the short films, the thing is with short films is your success and your road can only go so far, because you can't market a short film in the same way. You can't sell it in the same way. It can be a great reel for you as a director, which I think is really a lot of the reasons people do them. But there's a whole subculture of like short film ville where everything is about the short film. I mean, submitting artifacts to, you know, festivals was hard work, because like I go through all this stuff and then I click and it would be like only under 20 minutes. And I'm like, it's a fucking 2-hour movie. It's hard. It's really hard to like.
I can imagine.
So,
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Because short films are like a thing right now. Like, and I don't think they were a thing maybe 10 years ago.
I think
as much.
Yeah, I do think that people champion the feature a lot more 10 years ago, because also features were a lot easier to get distributed. Yes, now of course you can do stuff, you know, with Film Hub and things like that, but the criteria is so different because everything's going towards more about the cameras rather than the filmmaking. Which is quite obvious when you watch a lot of like Netflix stuff. And plus this whole thing about Netflix only accepts these cameras, and you're like, fuck off. Like, but you're telling me you're not going to put Skinamarink on there. You know, movies can break through.
Exactly.
Really, that is a load of nonsense. And the more you worry about, oh, well, I've got to have this rated camera, the further away you're getting from storytelling and the important stuff. You know, I mean... So yeah, it has changed the game a lot, and yeah, short films are definitely a thing. But if I'm honest, I think they're too much of a thing, because they're easier, and people get addicted to making short films. And then you've got like a short film about like a plastic bag blown in the wind, and then it wins tons of awards, and you're just like, that's not really like really difficult filmmaking. Like when you have a cast of 100, call me back and tell me how well you handle that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. But I assume for like a new filmmaker, it might be like a confidence builder, you know, getting a couple shorts out of the way.
No, but you're absolutely right.
But to turn that into a career.
That's my problem. Like I said, yeah, I'm definitely not against them or disparaging anyone or anything like that. But I do think there is a level where you should say, you know what, I've been making short films for a long time. I can obviously do them well. Maybe I could just compromise a little bit of quality if I don't have the money, but the story will still be there, and see if I can stretch my talent to an actual feature. And that's one step closer to really the people who matter believing in you. Because as good as your short film may look, a big company or a producer or somebody like that may look at it and go, this guy obviously knows how to handle style and vision and image, but yet feature films bring in different kind of problems where they look at you more as a person on how you can handle things like long shoots, budgets going down the shitter, people going down the shitter, and those
management.
Exactly, those real problems that really, that's what a film studio is looking for. They're looking for people who are going to be able to save them money and spend their money wisely with a clear head and not give in to too many silly things. Whereas a short film, these days, you can make a Hollywood-looking short film in a weekend. It doesn't take a lot of like mind-boggling logistics, whereas a feature does. So, you know, they're different things for different personality types.
But it definitely is a skill in making a good short film, because especially telling a story in such a 20-minute time span, and you're knocking out all of the questions in 20 minutes. There's a skill behind that.
I don't have that skill. That's another reason why I don't like them. Because I really struggle. Like, I write something and I'm like, yeah, this will be wrapped up in, you know, whatever. And then a little more detail comes in and I'm like, wow, there could be this subplot. And it really is that simple. Like, for instance, really the middle chapter in Artifacts of Fear, it runs longer. It should have been 20 minutes, 25 minutes, but it was half an hour. And that was the one where a friend of mine said to me, you want to make that into a feature, don't you? And I was just like, I really do, because that story really grabbed me, you know, because it is, without being arrogant, it is perfectly feasible for a writer to go, wow, I really love this story. It's not arrogant. It's just that it's something that I would enjoy, which is exactly why I do this, really, you know. So yeah, you know, it was one of those where I was like, this could absolutely grow into something bigger. But yeah, it is a real skill, and people who can make a cohesive short film that rounds off nicely and has a beginning, middle, and end, you know, they are really clever people. But I don't see it often. I'll be honest. That's just, you know,
it's not often.
I see unbelievable visuals often.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm like, wow, these guys really know what they're doing with their gear. But when it comes to story, it's either not there at all, or I'm like, this looks great, but what's going on? You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's what people in the cinema, when people are sat down and they paid $20 or whatever it may be, they don't want to be going, yeah, but what's happening here? They really want something that looks great and that comes round and really fulfills them. You know what I mean?
Now, as a filmmaker, all right, so we're in this age where it's all visual, visual, visual. And I blame it partially on the Marvel movies, but it's all about CGI visuals, and even it's kind of even stemmed into horror, you know, with the big name horror movies where it's CGI gore, special effects, a monster's head coming out of neck, so
yeah, I'm not so into
but after a while, but I mean, and that shit is totally cool, you know what I mean? It's cool, but if it affects the story, don't you think that's an issue?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, look how many needless shots you see in things, and you know, just stuff where they're just flexing those CGI muscles and stuff like that. I mean, you've really managed to get me on some interesting topics here, because I actually hate Marvel as well.
I used to love Marvel. I used to love it. I used to love it.
I think it's great. It's great product. It's great for kids. It's great for merchandising. It does all the stuff that like big summer blockbusters used to do back in the day, where it was kind of like, it doesn't matter if we have these misses, so we have this one big hit or whatever it may be that is going to sweep up all of the merch and McDonald's, you know, toys and all that stuff. But now it's kind of like it's all they do, and it drains a lot of resources for other filmmakers. It sucks a lot of the air out of the room. Even for the actors, you see, the actors aren't really doing much else.
No,
because they're like, here's $1 billion to not do anything else. And they go, well, I can't say no to that, you know. And then you get guys that are really fantastic actors, and I don't want to say they're wasted, because they're having a great career, and that is a really wonderful thing, and they're making kids and adults happy. I'm not knocking it. It's just, for me, I'd just like to see a little bit more like back in the really fun days, where a really edgy movie could be a Hollywood blockbuster, and you're like, how is that a hit? But wow, you know. So yeah, I'm conflicted about it, and I have to say, understanding what Martin Scorsese meant philosophically when he said that Marvel was the death of cinema, not literally. And in the same response as what Robert Downey said, where he said, well, they go to cinemas, so they are cinema, but I get what he's saying.
Yes.
What Marty meant by that was that it was becoming, this is everything. The Marvel movies are everything, and this is how you should watch cinema, and this is where all the big studio budgets are going. And it was like, well, what about a movie about, you know, just a guy? You know, no CGI, just a man on the road, or a real story that would really, you know, pull at your heart and give you some integrity. That is something that, you know, Scorsese does brutally, and, you know, it can be really moving as well. I just think that he, like a lot of us, thrive for again, it sounds shitty to be like real movies, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean? You know,
Yeah,
one's popcorn and one's gonna stay with you forever.
I mean, like even like I grew up in the '80s, and so I grew up with not only horror movies but the action movies. I love the '80s. John Claude Van Damme, Bloodsport, all that shit.
Oh yes,
love all that shit, right? But even action movies today they have the big budget CGI, big explosions, cars, and there's very little action and there's very
but
little
they can't fight.
Fighting. Yeah, it's like
yeah,
it's nothing but cars flying down the road, making stunts, jumping, and this and that. It's like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I mean, one of my favorite films, I know it's not 80s, but I think it was 1991, is Hard Target.
Hard Target with John Claude Van Damme is amazing.
Yeah.
John Woo.
And like every like punch and kick is slow-mo, and it's so painful, and it's brilliant. I mean, the Bourne movies really inspired a lot of how action changed, and it inspired James Bond, obviously.
Yes.
How James Bond was to change and things like that. And I thought they were great. And at the time, they were just what it needed. But it became a little bit too much. Like every other studio became obsessed with like, let's cut away every time there's a punch or something. And it became like, what are the actors doing? Are they just going, and action? Okay, and action. You know, there's no like 5-minute painful fight scene. I mean, Jackie Chan, you watch his stuff and you're like, these guys could never do that now. Yeah, there's very little of anything in these action movies other than, like you said, cars exploding and yeah, it's a shame.
I mean, John Wick, Keanu Reeves with John Wick brought that back.
Yes.
He definitely brought that back. Whereas hand-to-hand combat, the 20-minute fight scenes, I mean, he definitely the makers of that movie the series definitely brought back the old school 80s.
Oh, definitely. Well, I mean, I've always thought that John Wick really is like the Punisher movie we wish we had that we never got. In a sense, although I like the Punisher movies that have come out for different reasons. John Wick was like, well, you know, we're not playing around. We're just going to go back and we're going to make it painful and we're going to make you watch every part of it. And it was a very heartfelt story as well. You know, just the idea of a guy just downtrodden. He's not supernatural. He hasn't got powers, and you know, it was just great. Yeah, I wish they did more like that. I wish there was a little bit more emphasis on real story rather than effects. And you know, I like effects as much as anyone else, but it can just get a bit much, and you get a bit like numb to it as well, don't you?
It's like the Fast and Furious movies. Like, I mean, they just gotten completely ridiculous when it comes to effects. I mean, it's just outrageous, ridiculous, and it completely knocks you out of the mood when you're watching those movies.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen bits and pieces. I'm like one of those old men when they say, "Have you heard, you know, so and so about, you know, Beyonce's new song?" And they go, "Oh, I don't know. I wouldn't know any of that new music. I've not listened for so long." I'm a bit like that with like Fast and Furious and those type of movies. People say, "Have you seen that movie? It's crazy." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I bet it's nuts what they're doing now." I've not watched it in so long. I think Tokyo Drift might be the last one I watched.
Tokyo Drift was amazing.
It was great.
Amazing. Yes.
But for me, it just all lost so much steam, and my problem is I just watched the same movies I've already seen 100 times because I love them.
Me too. Like if I want to watch an action movie, and I actually did it again this past weekend. Bloodsport.
Oh yeah.
I can watch that movie over and over again. All the John Claude Van Damme, even like the Chuck Norris and shit.
Yeah.
I can rewatch that stuff over the Terminators. I can rewatch the old Terminators, not the new ones. But I can watch that old stuff because it's like, and maybe it's because I'm old now. Maybe I'm 41 and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm stuck. I'm that old man who's only the stuff that I grew up with is good, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think everyone's got that right to feel that way, except people that are born today, because the stuff today isn't that good. I don't feel like they're going to be like in 30 years sat around talking about classic films of like 2020 or 2021, because you know it's just different, isn't it? It's so different, and a lot of those, you know, when they say, "Oh, they'll never make that again," or they don't make them like they used to, they really don't. Because
if you go up to the average person in that generation and ask them, what is the best horror movie? And they're going to tell you it's Terrifier. They're going to tell you it's Terrifier every single fucking time. Terrifier. And listen, and people probably think I hate Terrifier. I don't hate Terrifier. I just hate that people act like it's the greatest movie ever made.
Yeah.
And horror movie ever made. And it's like not even close.
That's the third chord that you've struck with me today. Terrifier. I don't hate it, and I wish them well, and I'm really glad for the success. But I'm like, why are you telling me that this is like the greatest horror film? This is the standard for horror films. You know, great effects,
amazing at practical effects.
But what else is there to it? You know, I mean, for me personally, I don't want to go on record and bash Terrifier, but for me personally, I just needed a little bit of something else because it looked great, it started great, the effects are great, and I was like, when's the next thing going to happen that's going to move me? And then it was just like, oh, so it's really a shocker. It's kind of almost a little bit back to the days of like Hostel. You know, where
but at least Hostel has some character development. Like Terrifier had no character development, and it was just the same thing from beginning to end.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's what people like now, isn't it? I mean, people aren't interested in being as challenged as they used to. Absolutely, you know, the stuff that comes out is not challenging, and it's not that original, it's not that edgy, but yeah, there's enough like explosions and, you know, severed heads or whatever it may be, just to fulfill today's audience into going, oh yeah, that was great, and you're like, really? I don't see it.
I love Terrifier 2. Terrifier 2 did
it's great. I'm
right.
not, you know,
it did everything. It did everything that the first one didn't do, right? But when someone tells me that Terrifier 2, even Terrifier 2 is the greatest horror movie ever made, I look at them like, no.
Yeah, it's the fact that the fans are very.
I don't even think Damien Leone thinks Terrifier 2 is the greatest movie. The director thinks it's the greatest horror movie ever made. So like,
to me, they're just having fun anyway. I feel like they're trying to see what they can get away with, and they've struck gold and they've resonated with people, which is awesome. But also, a lot of the fans I see them talking about, but they don't differentiate the two movies. They just go Terrifier. Everything is about art, is about the clown, which is, again, it's great to have a new horror boogeyman that really is taking off.
Too.
Absolutely, because there's a couple of villains in the past that I always thought would be absolutely huge, but I understand why they never made it. But like things like I'm a huge Jeepers Creepers fan. And I always felt that because of the controversy with the director and lots of other factors, it was even though they did, 3-4 movies, I still feel like it was a massively missed opportunity. I'm not quite sure what I would have done differently myself, and I'm not quite sure what I wanted out of it, but I still go away thinking, God, Jeepers Creepers was so good. I just wish there was more.
I'm going to tell you what I think was wrong with Jeepers Creepers, and it's take the controversy out of it.
Sure.
I think that, like, so I remember, I was in high school when the first Jeepers Creepers came out, and it didn't get that much attention.
No,
because there was so much other shit out horror wise. It
wasn't an MTV movie, was it, as well?
Yeah, and I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream, all that shit was boom, boom, boom. So it was horror.
Yeah,
and it was one called Joyride or something. All that shit was coming out at the same time, and Jeepers Creepers original got buried on that because Freddie Prinze Jr. or whoever wasn't in it. And I remember renting it from the video store. I was like, wow, this is such a good movie. And it just got a cult following. And then the second one came out. and I think it was like number one in the box office for because
they made it an MTV movie, didn't they? They made it about teens, and they just did what everyone else did, basically.
Yes. And that killed it because in horror has this huge fucking problem, and it frustrates me. Horror beats the fucking nail in the head with something over and over and over again. So if they hit success with something, they just run it out, like Scream.
Formulaic.
I call it the Scream era. That was the 90s. it was everything was like Scream. Everything, the faculty, all that had the same box cover, like the same
Oh
the same
man,
poster as Scream.
yeah.
Everything was a direct knockoff. I mean, even Halloween H2O was a Scream
H2O was
knockoff.
so Scream.
It
I
was a
mean, it
Scream
was like
knockoff.
watching Scream, wasn't it? And the
Yeah.
you know, you could tell because it was written by Kevin Williamson as well. The way it, yeah. I mean, I like H2O a lot, but when
Yeah,
you
I
watch
did.
it, it just has such a non-Halloween, more
It's
of a
not a Halloween
'90s
movie.
Scream kind of vibe. Yeah,
And then you get into the 2000, and then Blair Witch came out, which I love Blair Witch, and then everything was found footage from Paranormal Activity. It just went on and on and on and on. Then The Conjuring came out. No, then Hostel came out, and everything was torture porn, torture porn, torture porn.
yeah.
And then The Conjuring came out, everything was
Insidious,
and everything.
Yeah,
And that's what horror. I mean, that's what the horror genre does. It just kills it. It just takes a great idea and just kills it until somebody else comes up with another great idea.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, it's funny you mentioned that, because one movie that I think was way ahead of its time, not that it was doing anything new, it was actually really classic, but a movie that had all the vibe and the feeling of like the new breed of horror movies, like Insidious, The Conjuring, which I like because they were taking it back to almost like a Hammer horror style, which I really enjoyed. But one movie that was released years before that looks similar and looks like it could be in that whole universe was Dead Silence.
Dead Silence was great.
I love that movie, and to me it just feels like an Insidious universe movie, the way it was shot, and it was almost like they did that years ago and they were already ready to do it again, because I just find them similar. You know, I think they
are.
I think if you watch the movie and The Conjuring came out and then the next year Dead Silence came out, I don't think you would have gone, well, this is old and dated, or whatever, whatever year it's from. It just had that classic vibe, because a lot of those horror movies, they weren't dated in a sense. Some of them were set in the 70s, but they all had that kind of just old-fashioned feeling,
Yes, I agree.
but not necessarily set in the past, but it's just they weren't overdoing it too much, because I kind of like stuff when, I don't know, when I watch movies and everything's super modern and like there's a chase with a killer or a ghost or something in like some sort of like smart house or some sort of like futuristic mansion, it just doesn't scare me. It's got to be an old-fashioned house. It has to be, for me anyway.
I like that dark, gritty look and feel to a horror movie. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I loved Sinister. I thought Sinister was probably one of the best new original. Yeah, part 2 was great, it was original story. It was something new for a change, and it mixed in found footage with like ghost story with and I love how they threw out a lot of the tropes with lighting. Everything was so dark. I think it was really gutsy and clever.
Yep, I 100% agree. Now, but right now we're in the Terrifier era, like, because I mean I watch a lot of indie films, filmmakers, and everything is based off of Terrifier. Like everybody's trying to create the next Terrifier.
Yeah,
and, like that's where we're at right now in horror. We're in the Terrifier era.
I definitely felt a bit of that when I was sort of looking up, because when you make a movie, it takes, you can do it in a month, but for me, it just took a couple of years because of the pandemic and all sorts of things. But by the time the movie had finished, and I was kind of gauging the temperature of like movies, I thought, this is really old fashioned. Like, this is really not current of like the time. But the saving grace is, outside of like the current trends, for some reason, anthology movies have always got their little place, and horror fans and I get it because I love them. I love the idea. It's just so much fun. So I kind of thought, well, hopefully somebody out there is looking for something a little bit more old fashioned, and not just like Terrifier, because it's not really, I can't really deliver that. It's not really in my style,
Yeah. So, what are some horror movies recently, like some recent ones that have caught your attention that you're like, wow, I like the, I would say in the last 3 years that you were like, wow, I like.
Oh man, see, this is like when I go to karaoke and I sing, so I know plenty of songs. And when someone says, "What are you going to sing?" I'm like, my brain. I'm trying to think. There's loads I've watched. I'm like 1 second away from going on my Facebook and checking my stupid reviews I put up. No, I loved Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I thought was amazing.
Okay, I haven't seen that one yet.
That's really great. The
Is it?
Guillermo del Toro. Yeah, and I think he's doing another one as well.
Okay.
Malignant, I liked a lot.
Like that's amazing.
Yeah. There was a really good movie that was similar to Hereditary called Spiral, which wasn't the Saw one, but it was about a gay couple that had moved into this neighborhood, and again, it was a little bit like in that vein of like Get Out, where you kind of think it's going to be like an anti-gay thing, but actually there's something much worse going on, and there's cults and stuff. That was really good. That was on Shudder, and I never heard about it ever again, and I've not seen it since. Yeah, it's called Spiral, but it's same year, but it's not the Saw one, and I think that was possibly why I don't know. Maybe they made a mistake with the title. Not a new movie, but a friend of mine sent me a film a few years ago that I absolutely adored, called Boys in the Trees, which is an Australian, really it's a Halloween drama rather than a horror, but that's really good. That's really worth watching. I loved Halloween and Halloween Kills. Halloween Ends, we won't talk about that.
Yeah. I talked enough about that on my channel.
I was going to say, that's going to have me triggered for the 4th time today. Let me have a quick look, see if, because my memory short term for like things I've watched, and I have watched. Yes, with Justin Long.
Yes,
that's great. That was really good. Amazing. And I do love Justin Long. What I love about him is he manages to play like a really nasty, nice guy who's heroic and wimpy at the same time. And I don't know how he does it. I really don't know how he does it. He's like nice and charming, but he's also a complete dickhead. And he comes across like he'll save the day, but also he's so cowardly. And he's kind of like the way that Bruce Campbell does Ash like that. I don't know how he does it, but he's one of my favorites. And that all started with Jeepers Creepers. That was the first time. As soon as I saw him in that, and of course Galaxy Quest, which I loved, I was like, this guy is going places. Five Nights at Freddy's, I loved.
Really? You like that?
Yeah, I could tell you didn't like it, but just by the way you asked me. Look, I did write some scribbling on Facebook about it. The reality is, it was terribly written, and there were bits where I was like, how am I supposed to buy into this? And there were reactions that were wrong, like the way the actors reacted to things, and it was really terrible and a complete clusterfuck. But because I relaxed and just took it for what it was, I was like, I just really enjoyed it. So that's where I'm at. It is a terrible, terrible film, but you know as well as anyone, when you really understand films and you're at least intelligent enough to go, this is shit, but I love it. You know what I mean? And a lot of people can't do that. They can't cut one or the other. They go, shit, how can I like it?
I thought that I was out of loop with that movie. I thought I was out of loop with that movie because I didn't play the video game.
I never played the video game.
Okay, no. Because I knew it was based on a video game, and I was like, this is a video game I never played or even heard of.
Right, yeah.
And I was like, but let me go in. Like, I could go see the Resident Evil movies because I played the Resident Evil games, but this is, I was like, I never even heard of Five Nights at Freddy. I was like, but I'm hearing a lot of buzz about this movie. I was like, hopefully it's one of these movies I can go in and like never play the video game or don't know about it.
And just enjoy the film.
Enjoy the movie. And I couldn't. I just felt like I was missing something.
There were, to be honest with you, I think though that was down to the lazy writing, because I figured out enough what was going on, but it was so quick into the flashbacks with the brother. And it was so like undiscussed, and then suddenly this is happening. You go, oh right, okay. And then like the whole thing where we're supposed to be in like a real universe, but then the dad's like, okay, you can go and hang out with these animatronics. We'll all just have pizza together, and you're like, but how is he not like, what's going on? And then it was like that was the thing that I struggled with, although I loved it. When I realized. When they were like getting the animatronic in the back of the taxi, and the taxi driver was like, "What's up with your friend?" I was like, "Okay, this is complete bullshit." but I'll just enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? So
But
once I got past that, I was fine with it and I really enjoyed it. But it took me a while. I was like, what is this? But
I thought I missed something. I thought I was completely out of the loop, and like I didn't play the video game, and like I thought it was one of those movies where it just seemed like one of those movies, like, you're missing something if you didn't play the video game. Like,
yeah, I mean, I definitely felt that way, but I realized I think it was just it was I think it was lazy writing, and I think that sometimes, I mean, the thing is, for me, you can't really do an adaptation of a video game just
No.
for the players.
yes,
You have to explain everything so that people have never, because a movie should always stand on its own as a movie. That's why it always pissed me off. Like, I'm not really a big gamer, but when I was a kid, whenever like a game of like a movie I love came out, it was shit because
Every
they
single
just
time.
would rush it out. It would usually have basically the same gameplay and the same script and all that, but they would just change the graphics to match the movie or whatever. And I thought, well, this won't stand on its own as its own game, with very few exceptions. And I think films adaptations can be the same. And I don't think a film should be like a treat for those who played the game. A film should be a film for film fans or anyone, whether they even know what the Five Nights at Freddy's even is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. There was definitely, I think it could have been done. I think it could have been done a lot better as a really dark, actually scary standalone horror movie that kind of said, well, we don't care about the game, but we're using the story.
Exactly.
And I think they met in the middle where they were like, we want to please the video game fans and we'll try and make a movie that kind of everyone can enjoy. And then that just kind of clashed. So yeah, I probably would never watch it again, but I enjoyed it, and I wouldn't mind some behind the scenes. I wouldn't mind seeing how they made it.
Yeah, did you watch Talk to Me this year?
No, I've missed it. I've not seen it
Talk
yet.
to Me is amazing.
I heard it's really good.
Yeah.
I liked the new Evil Dead. I thought it was fun. I thought
That was
good.
fun.
Yeah,
Definitely fun.
I thought it had it was just clever. It just had all the elements, and but it wasn't too reliant on, well, at least I didn't think it wasn't like overly reliant on nostalgia, although there were good nods to the other ones.
Excellent nods.
Yeah, and some nods where they were so out there, I was like, oh wow, that's really cool. I didn't realize they were going to like just copy bits, but other bits sort of stood on their own. So I think it was really cleverly done, and I would be happy to see more for sure.
Because I saw that movie, and then Bruce Campbell was doing a trivia show. Like, he was coming state to state and doing a trivia show, and I went to Bruce Rama.
Nice.
And one of the question was, what was his role in Evil Dead Rise? And I'm like, wait, he was in Evil Dead Rise?
Yeah. Because he did the voice, didn't he, on the record?
He was the voice on the record. I didn't know that. Yeah.
It was great. It was really great because I went actually further trivia for you, because I was like, because I'm quite sort of, I suppose I have a good ear because I do a lot of sound design and stuff. But there were certain bits where they were like, oh, that's Bruce Campbell. And I was like, that is not Bruce Campbell. That is definitely not Bruce. Even putting on a voice, I was like, listen to it so hard to see if I could hear Bruce in there. And I realized that Bruce does half of them, and half of them, it's the old man. I can't remember the character or the actor, but the old man who's in the movie, he does two roles, but he's uncredited as the voice guy. So it's him and Bruce. So there were bits I was like, that's Bruce. But yeah, I was like on Reddit, I was like trying to find out which bits Bruce did specifically, because I'm that much of a sad fan. And some bits they were like, oh, he does that bit, and I was like, that is not Bruce. And then I found out that it was him and another guy. So yeah, you can cut that bit. No one gives a shit about.
No. Listen,
me at 3 a.m.
horror
on
fans.
Google.
This is a horror fan show, man. It's a horror fan show, so it's
I like
the only
it.
channel people will enjoy that. But
Yeah, I'm glad about that.
all right,
I was just going to say one other movie I did see that I wanted to like, that I did enjoy, but I didn't love it, was Black Phone. I just thought it was kind of a bit.
I enjoyed Black Phone.
I enjoyed it, but I thought, again, I wanted something else. I wanted something more, and I don't know what I wanted, but there was just something that seemed a bit disjointed about it. But I'm interested to see the sequel because they're doing a sequel.
Yes.
And I think it'll be fun to see. I think they might expand things that will make the first one more cohesive and enjoyable.
Now, my surprise for the year, because I was saying the whole entire time this year that this movie was going to be shitty. and that was Saw X. Saw X was fucking amazing.
You know, I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard amazing things. I'm really excited to see it because, they take it right back to the beginning, and those, that original series. I didn't mind Spiral, and I didn't mind Jigsaw, but I'm a big fan of really when the whole Detective Hoffman storyline starts. I love them all. But there was like 4 and 5 and 6. There was just a thread that went through that I was really into. And in 6, when they reveal that it's Hoffman and they slow the tape down with his voice and things like that, that scene is just amazing. I just thought it was such a great who done it, even though we knew who did it. The idea of like this cop who was a complete psychopath, and then at the end when he has the trap on and he pulls the trap off and he's screaming and his face is hanging off. I watched that at the cinema and I was like, God, this is good. So I'm really excited to see it. Go on.
See, I definitely checked out with Saw after 4. I just checked out because they was pumping them out like once a year, and I just checked out.
I didn't like 3 and 4. I felt like 1 and 2 was super strong. 3 and 4 just became a bit, I don't know, but then sort of 5 and 6 it picked me up a little bit, and with Costas Mandylor, I think he's such a great actor. I was like, wow, this is a really cool storyline, and I thought I was done with it, but then I've got really dragged into it. 6 I really enjoyed, and I like the idea in 7 as well. Is it 7? 3D was okay, but I did like the idea of like the Bobby Flay character, whatever his name is. What was his name? I can't think of his damn name. But the guy who like wrote a book about being a Saw survivor and he was never a survivor. I thought that was very clever. That was a good one.
But I went into Spiral, and Spiral was released during COVID. So I went to the movie. I was still going to the movie during COVID. And I loved it because I was the only person there.
Empty, so you're not going to catch anything in an empty cinema.
Nothing. Right? I was the only person there. But Spiral, I was rooting for Spiral. Right. And I went in there, and then like halfway through, I was like, this is not good. This is not good. It's
horrible when that happens.
This is not winning me over, trying to bring me back as a Saw fan at all.
No. I thought it was strange as well. I don't know. Chris Rock was good in it, but it was random, for him to be in it. I thought it was strange casting.
I just saw Chris Rock and Samuel L. Jackson, and it's going to be a new spin. I was like, okay, listen, I can do this. And 2020, I'm going to say 2020 was a disappointing year for horror. Because it's crazy, because 2020 and 2021 and 2022 was great, because 2020, I mean, we got, once again, COVID was in full bloom. People weren't going to theaters. I mean, we got Halloween Kills, which I thought was the best movie of the year, which it wasn't even that great of a movie, But we got the Candyman reboot that came out. I saw that in the theaters. I was not impressed by that.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
I didn't like it. I just didn't like it. I mean, and I love the original Candyman. I
do, yeah. It's one of my favorites of all time.
Yeah, and then we got a movie called Men that came out, and if you want to hear about me talk about Men, I got an interview that's coming out soon. Him and I literally talk about that movie Men for like 40 minutes, but completely forgot about his project. But that came out, and then Spiral and something else came out. But it was just like bad movies for that during that COVID time for horror.
It wasn't great. I think because it crushed a lot of independent spirit. Because I think, you've got like Tom Cruise can still have his movie and pay for like solid gold face masks and get no one to say boo to a goose. But when it came to like businesses and all sorts of things being crushed and shut down, it made the indie scene very difficult. And then the trickle down, or the trickle up, I suppose, is that the indie scene that is like millions of dollars still, they really struggled. So I think that the more the homegrown horror movies that tend to climb up and become those really cool hits, I just don't think they were happening. I just think it was a very difficult time, and whatever we got given, we kind of had to make do with, really.
There was a good movie that came out, and it wasn't even that good. It was called Freaky, and it had Vince Vaughn in it, and it was a Blumhouse movie, and it took place
Yes,
with a teenage girl. That was good. I saw that,
that's nuts.
but for me to say that that was good though means that it was
It doesn't
slim
say much.
pickings for
Yeah, no,
2020.
absolutely, absolutely. I remember seeing the trailer for that, and I thought, this is just Freaky Friday, and they called it Freaky. I was like, what's going
Yes,
on? Like,
it literally
they
was.
literally, they don't care anymore. But then when the Blumhouse thing came up, I was like, interesting.
Oh, I
Yeah,
can go by
no,
Blumhouse for a good hour. What is Blumhouse doing? Like Blumhouse puts out some gold every once in a blue moon, but
yes.
Blumhouse puts out a lot of shit too.
Yeah, well, Blumhouse does syndicate other films. This is the thing. I think the tough thing to understand about Blumhouse is they are a production company, but they're also distributors. They will go after rights and they accept submissions and things like that. And I think that I think there's a plan to just keep content coming out, and every other one might be like real Blumhouse seal of approval, but then there's other stuff, and I've seen stuff I've been like, that was Blumhouse.
Yeah,
Do me a
I've seen a
favor.
lot of shitty movies, like, and
Yeah.
Blumhouse is stamped on. I'm like, really? What the
Yeah,
fuck?
yeah. I
Like,
mean, because they make some really fantastic stuff, and
mhm.
Jason Blum is a very clever guy, and I like his whole deal. I like his, from what I've seen, I dig his vibe. I think he's got his heart in the right place. As far as he's a filmmaker that cares about the films and the fans, he's also a very good businessman. But there's always going to be some stinkers that seem to slip through the
Yes,
cracks. And
it's like for every good one, there's like 4 or 5 stinkers.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
much like seasons of American Horror Story.
Oh, listen, I stopped messing American Horror Stories a while ago, man. I checked out.
I don't blame you.
I checked out.
Yeah, I mean, I loved the first one, and I loved, obviously, Asylum was great. I enjoyed Freak Show I found a bit overrated, but I still enjoyed it. I loved Apocalypse, but yet Hotel and the ones that I was really excited about, and Coven, I was so excited for it.
I
And
like Coven.
I couldn't get on with Coven, but
See,
go on.
I checked out at halfway through Freak Show. I completely, my brain checked out on American Horror after Freak Show.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about American Horror Story that's interesting is that most people who watch TV shows like Dexter, so we'll just say Dexter because I love Dexter, but anyway, most people. So if we're all fans watching Dexter, when the series becomes shit, we all go, God, it's getting shit, isn't it? Yeah, it is. And there's no real argument. But where American Horror Story is like a whole different brand, played by the same actors and things like that, which is great. But where it's such a different, like a fresh start every season, I think there's that fun room for fans to be like, you like that season? I did not like that season. Because that's exactly every conversation I have. People are like, God, Coven was the best one or whatever. And I'm like, no fucking way. You got to be kidding me. But there is only so much of like, how long is it going to, you said this thing is R-rated. How long is it going to be before someone is anally raped in a gimp mask? Because it just comes in like every season. And I got nothing against that. I'm into all sorts. I will totally freely admit. I'm very liberal. But I was still a bit like, are they still doing this? And then I tried to watch American Horror Stories, which I was excited about. But then I saw a scene and there was all this stuff happening again. And the characters were like, oh, yeah, we're big fans of American Horror Story. And I was like, no, they're not referencing themselves. And I just couldn't do it.
I think it definitely jumped the shark. I think, yeah. But listen, but I know tons of people who get excited every fucking when a new season comes out. They get absolutely excited. Yeah. Tons of people. Yeah. Unlike The Walking Dead, like the Walking Dead crawled its way to finishing. Like
absolutely.
But that's exactly nobody was watching. Saying. No, I don't think nobody was watching the final couple of seasons.
And that's what I'm saying. That's what I mean. When it's a show that is kind of everyone's expecting consistency. With American Horror Story, whether you like it or not, you don't expect consistency. You don't really know what's coming you know, and that's kind of you either like it or you don't. And it's very ballsy to just try and be like, we're just going to do this whether you like it or not. But with Walking Dead, you've got source material and you've got all these past wonderful seasons. So you kind of, you know, you do owe the audience something. And there is a pressure and there is a guideline that you must follow. But with TV shows, it all depends on the showrunner, doesn't it? I mean, most time the showrunner goes, the good one goes. Who knows what's going to happen? But yeah, that got diabolical. And it was so sad because I loved it. I used to love it so much.
I remember like Walking Dead, like was a thing. You go on social media, everybody was Sunday, Walking Dead would come out. Monday, everybody was talking about it. Like it was a huge thing. Like if you didn't watch the episode, you don't get on social media the next day. You go to work. Don't tell me what happened. You know,
absolutely,
and it was a thing, and then it just fucking died quick. Like
suddenly it wasn't a thing. Suddenly they were like, "This has got shit." You know, to me, I stopped watching after Negan. After the when Glenn died and Negan, I just because I thought that was all great, but after that, I was like, "What's happening here?" I loved the whole story with the governor and things like that. But after that, it you know, the thing is, the only problem with a lot of TV shows, and especially shows that I really love, old school shows like let's take the X-Files for instance, or Supernatural. I like them to be separate stories where kind of anything can happen. But with every TV show, and you can't help it, you have to do it. It gradually has to become part of a huge thread. And Buffy did the same with Dawn and the Key and stuff like that. And it wasn't for me. You know, X-Files, again, it was like every episode was about Tunguska and things like that, and everything was all intertwined. And I know they have to do that. I understand that. But there was, you know, there's certain shows where they did that and I was so there for it, and other shows I'm just like, this. If this is going to be what it is for the rest of the series, it's just not for me, you know.
I checked out once the zombies started fucking talking. That's when I checked out. I was like, ooh.
I think to be honest with you, I erased that from my memory. When you said that just now, I was like, in my head, I was like, fucking hell, did they really talk? Honestly, I got so done with it. I really checked out. Jesus Christ.
I completely checked out when they started whispering with each other. I don't know how that finished up. Anything, I just completely done. I'm like, I'm not watching this anymore.
The thing is with that is when you start to fuck with like classic, you know, creatures, you know, I mean, you wouldn't want to go into the zoo and suddenly, you know, a lion is like frying a steak on a cook on a grill. Do you know what I mean? You'd be like, the fuck? What's happened with the lion? You go in there and the lion is suddenly blue or something. You'd be like, you're fucking with my lions, man.
When he got some wings and he's flying. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you'd be bewildered, but you'd be like, I can't buy it. With zombies, it's the same thing. Zombies should be dead, very dead, not able to talk, barely able to move, really. I think they should look a lot more crusty than they do. I'm not as bought into the whole rage virus thing, even though I'm involved heavily in a film about rage virus, so I can't, you know, not that too much. But I like them to be out the graveyard. I like my zombies, zombies. And the only reason why I wasn't so keen on like Army of the Dead is when they get too smart. I'm like, yeah, but they're not zombies to me. When a zombie is like, hand me a gun, you know, I'm a bit like, you're not a zombie. You're not a fucking zombie. You're alive, man. You have a brain.
But when these motherfuckers start whispering and putting strategic plans together, I was like, yeah, I can't watch this shit anymore. I'm like, what the fuck am I watching? Like, did you run out of ideas?
Yeah.
Something like this is. I don't even know how that scenario ended or where that came from. I just know that the zombies were fucking whispering or talking, and I was like, I can't watch this shit anymore.
Listen, there's only one thing a zombie should ever say, and that's brains. That's it.
The only thing. That's it.
That's the only movie that could get away with that. I'm sure in like Army of the Dead there was a pregnant zombie or something, and I was like, what have you done? Why would
I
you
don't
do
like
this?
intelligent zombies. I don't like intelligent zombies.
No, because they're not. They should never be intelligent. You know what I mean? It's like
Their brains
yeah.
are rotting away. I mean, everything like they're.
Well, it's like when they talk about having Michael Myers talk. I mean, how many times does that come into the series? You think that's such a bad idea, but yet you've brought it up a few times where
I,
you've thought about having Michael Myers
yes, I
talk, and you're
did.
like, never, never. What on earth are you thinking?
What does it sound like, though? I'm just curious.
That's a really good question. I mean, I have no idea. I really have no idea. It's a
What if
really
he had
funny question.
what if he had like a Mike Tyson voice? Hello there, motherfucker! I'm gonna kill you. Like that would be great, wouldn't it? It would ruin the mood for Michael Myers, but
It really would. The funny thing I thought you were going to say he had like a Michael Jackson voice. Now
Michael Jackson voice would be perfect too.
Yeah, or maybe if he was just like some. What if he was like Steve Buscemi, like a really weaselly old white guy? That would be fucking hilarious, wouldn't it? He's like,
that would be great.
Amazing. When he pulls off the mask, it's Steve Buscemi, or someone like William H Macy, someone who looks like he couldn't even beat up a kid or something. You know what I mean?
He sounds like a Rhodes Scholar talking.
I would watch it. I would watch it over him having a sidekick, I think. Yeah.
I know. A sidekick that kills himself.
Yeah.
I'm like, why? You spent this whole fucking movie building this fucking character up for him to kill him fucking self. Like, why? By the way, listen, you're getting me onto a trigger of fucking Halloween. I fucking hate that movie.
Well, you know what's really funny is years ago when H2O came out, and my mates were like, "Oh yeah, they cut off his head," and then he came back because it was, you know, the whole thing, resurrection, which I preferred to Halloween Ends. I'll tell you that. But anyway, and I was like, I said it many times to friends. You know, really, the only way they could kill him, surely, that would be to put him in some sort of meat grinder. And I can't believe that they did that because it was so ridiculous. And when they were like carrying his body, it's like this old guy with a bald head. I was like, oh God, you're killing Michael Myers, like really killing the story.
Yes.
And all of it was so fucking awful. And I just love how they go through the whole, when you watch any making of any, you know, I love to repeat watch stuff and interviews, even if I know they're going to be talking about the same stuff. I'd love to hear it. But they always talk so much about, like, when we did 3, we knew we made a mistake. But then they're like, let's do that again.
I know.
Just, even though it wasn't a totally different story, I know. But even like when they tried to do like part 3 style opening credits, I was just like, what's happening here? And for me, I really, really did enjoy Kills. I loved the fan service.
I didn't love Kills. I mean, I love Kills, but I like Kills. I actually love Kills when I saw it in the theaters. But then I came home and watched it. I was like, oh, I don't like this.
Yeah, I think it was one of those moments where you watch it on a big screen and it's a little bit more special. I enjoyed all the flashbacks. I thought they were incredibly clever and stuff like that. I felt fulfilled. There were some things that I hated, but you know, silly plot holes and plot bits that were brought in, but nothing prepared me for Ends.
It's like you're gonna do this at the end. You know, literally at the end of a trilogy, you're gonna add all this bullshit into it.
Yeah,
I'm like, it just made no sense.
I mean, and so many like lazy writing bits, because I love the whole idea that Laurie Strode is like, I'm living out in the woods as a hermit. I'm terrified the boogeyman's going to get me or whatever. But then in Halloween Ends, it's like I decided to let it all go. And even
go to the grocery store, go on dates.
I didn't even know if Michael Myers was alive or dead, but it was time to move on. So I bought a moderate house with no security right in the neighborhood where he likes to stalk people. And I was just like, what is this?
And the crazy part about when she was living in the woods, he was locked up. She knows he's walking around. They still haven't found his fucking body.
Like, it's so funny.
The movie made absolutely no fucking sense.
No. And I'll tell you what, actually, one movie that I found really, I did enjoy in part. Talking about when you said what films have you seen that you like, I did like the new Texas Chainsaw that was trying to definitely be a legacy. Stop it. Oh, hold on. Hear me out.
We're done now. We're done. We're done.
I'll leave. No, look.
Go ahead. I want to hear this now. I want to hear this. Good.
Look, It was a pandemic. I was bored. Do you know what I mean? No, I enjoyed like bits of it for what it was, but I didn't like the idea because it reminded me of the whole idea when they tried to bring like Sally back and make her like this Jamie Lee Curtis kind of, and then when she's got the gun and she can shoot him, she goes, "I just can't do it," and then and then she gets to do it, and then he runs away, and you're like, you just had a chance to shoot him, and it was like this whole big thing was built up, and then it went. It was awful. It was awful. But I enjoyed bits of it. I enjoyed bits. And I like the bit on the bus. I liked, but
I hated all the fucking characters. I was the girl. I was so glad she got her head cut off.
Yeah, the characters were criminally unlikable, and I think that's a real problem. And Rob Zombie said it very well. He said that the difference between Halloween and Friday the 13th is, you know, with a lot of the Friday the 13th movies, though I love all of them, they have like faceless characters and they have unlikable characters that you don't buy into. And I think Friday the 13th, you go into it knowing that you just want to see Jason do his thing. You want some sort of story that brings it together. We're not really bothered, but as long as all the elements are there, and fuck, we can just do it at the camp every year. We don't care. Just take it back to the camp every time, or in space. Don't even give a shit. Whatever. But with Halloween, I think the part of Halloween that makes it special is that it's such a homegrown story. I mean, you look at even stuff like 4 was a masterfully made movie, and characters like Ellie Cornell, you know,
Jamie Lloyd,
likable, where you were like, God, they're so cute. I really want them to be okay. And you just don't get that so much. And when characters are so self-centered and like, or they're so full of like character, you're like, oh fucking hell, you're awful, just chill out, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of actors these days, the problem with that, I think, going back to the filmmaking aspect, is a lot of filmmakers now, casting agents, especially in sort of like lower Hollywood, they go after like Instagram likes and things like that. They look for people who are maybe sort of on the cusp of influencers, and the actors these days are working for themselves. They're not working for the film. So they're out there and they're like so full of character, and they're like, this is going to be my time to shine. But what they don't realize is we're sat at home like, I fucking hate you. I hate you so much. I just want you to die in this film. Please. There's one character I like in this movie, and that's her. Everyone else can go. You know what I mean? So.
But that's how I felt about Eli Roth's Thanksgiving that just recently came out.
I've not seen it. I'm excited to see it.
Great movie, but the characters.
Oh, really?
Rusty, I'm telling you, the characters are just
unlikable.
It's just so, but it's not even unlikable. It's just they're just, you just don't feel no kind of way about them.
I get that.
I feel like that's worse than unlikable. You know what I mean?
No, you're absolutely right. And I think, as much as I don't mind it, getting back to the Halloween movies, as much as I don't mind it as a film, as a bit of a novelty, that's where Halloween 5, where the director made the mistake in Halloween 5, was that apart from Eddie Cornell, who died early on, and Jamie, Daniel Harris, who barely had any lines in the movie, all the other characters were they weren't even dislikable or likable. They were just there, or they were irritating, and that was it. I mean, stuff like what I can't even remember her name, Tina, and Spitz, the awful guy who's dressed up as Michael Myers, who's always giggling all the time, who was actually a really great actor and a really funny guy in real life, but the character that they wrote for him is just so weird. And sometimes,
I like Resurrection better. I do Part 5. Part 5 is just so bad.
I agree.
And because it's not a Halloween movie, it's a Friday the 13th.
It doesn't feel like a Halloween movie. It's got a really strange vibe to it, and I just think it was poorly directed. I mean, the choices were not good. And my favorite of the series actually is 6, which is incredibly.
Curse of Michael Myers is great. Curse of Michael Myers was great. I actually saw that in theaters when I was in junior high, and I love that movie.
Yeah, even the theatrical version, I have a lot of love for, and I love the producer's cut as well. But there was something about that, like, I mean, a lot of people say that the director wasn't interested in the series, but that really felt like a Halloween movie, and it's the only one that they filmed in the fall. So for me, it was really special. And you had like George Wilbur coming back, and obviously Donald Pleasance was in there, but he had a better character in 6. In 5, he was weird. He was weirdly written in 5. You know, the way he spoke and everything it made him a little bit creepy. I don't think I think they wrote him to be too harsh on Daniel Harris's character because it was weird. I don't think it came across well. You know, I won't go down that.
Loomis such an asshole in that movie.
Yeah, and I don't think that worked. I think, you know, because someone said it, amazingly, somebody on one of the documentaries said, originally, obviously, Christopher Lee was supposed to be Loomis in the original Halloween. That's who they wanted. And someone said that Christopher Lee wouldn't have worked because if Christopher Lee burst into your door and said, you know, there's a killer out there and he's coming to get us, you'd listen to him. You'd be like, fucking hell, this guy is serious. But Donald Pleasance has to play a character who's like, piss off, you're annoying, we don't believe you. And he does that brilliantly. And you feel sad for Loomis because you're like, this guy, because he's a little old guy and he's, you know,
he has a little bit of a limp. Yeah,
exactly. And you just he plays that really well. So somebody like that was almost like somebody you could ignore. You could go, get this guy out of my face. Whereas if Christopher Lee came through the door and was telling you what was up, you'd be like, okay, I believe you. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. Okay, I believe you. He's a very different kind of actor. And I think, to be honest with you, I do love the Rob Zombie ones. I thought Malcolm McDowell was great because he has a weird vibe.
I like part 2.
Yeah.
I like the second one. I didn't like the first one. I'm not a Rob Zombie fan.
That's fair.
I mean, but I like the second one, though.
Yeah, I must say I am a big Rob Zombie fan. I find his movies hit and miss. Some I'm not so keen on. But, yeah, 2 was great because it was and really interesting how they got to do it. And nobody really paid any attention to what they were doing. So Rob Zombie was like, we can just do anything. We can just fuck around. And essentially that's what that... No, I know. It's nuts.
And you got to see him as a man, too. Like Michael Myers as an actual man. Like he was living in the woods with no mask, with a big beard and long hair. And
yeah, I thought it was gutsy, you know, and it was something fresh and different. And Malcolm McDowell was just... I mean, Malcolm McDowell was sublime. He's so good. But he played that Loomis part so well that he was more of an arsehole that you could probably just push away and go, piss off, I don't want to deal with you. You know, so he had both levels going. And then the idea of him becoming a bit of a celebrity when they had Weird Al in there and everything. It's genius. I was like, I don't know what I'm watching, but this is really good. This is just fun, you know. So
Rusty, so we've talked about a lot. We
have
talked about we both dislike Terrifier. We talked about Halloween Ends. It's not great. We talked about a lot of tough things.
Well, what we've done is we've established that I'm not getting a job at Marvel. I'm not getting a job working for David Gordon Green. I'm not getting a job working for Damien Leone. And who else did we slag off? I can't remember.
What else did we hit on?
Blumhouse. No, I don't know. We were
Blumhouse, wasn't it? Yeah. We didn't say. You didn't say anything bad about James Wan. You said that you liked all the Saw movies.
No, I do. No. You know, well, see, James Wan's a tough one because we got obviously, you know, horror movies, and then we got Fast and the Furious. So, you know.
Yeah, I know.
And he kind of goes between Marvel, Fast and Furious. The guy has got a hell of a career, and he deserves every bit of it. I will say that much. How he manages to walk those lines in a way that only people like Robert Rodriguez can do. Nuts. So yeah, I'm here for it all, man. I don't hate anything. I'm all up.
But the most important thing is your horror anthology, Artifacts of Fear. Everybody.
That is the most important thing. Yes. You're right. Which you can check out now on Plex, Amazon Prime, DVD somewhere.
Is it Tubi?
Movies. Oh, Tubi. Hey, thank you for remembering. Check it out. I think horror fans will enjoy it, and I'm as I'm sure you can tell, I'm a huge horror fan, like proper thoroughbred horror fan. Yes. And I just tried to do a veritable buffet for horror fans, something for everyone. And there's a bit of found footage, there's a bit of 80s slasher, there's a bit of like 60s hammer horror, there's a bit of the Conjuring world style. Check it out.
And there's nothing worse, by the way, to have a horror filmmaker on. Yes, what's your favorite horror movie? And they're like, I don't watch horror, and you're like,
No.
I've had that
Does it
happen
happen?
several times, and I'm
I'm,
like, well,
I'm
how
going to
the
need their
hell?
names and their numbers. I need to know who these people are. No, I'm kidding.
I'm like, how the
Dude,
hell is this possible? Ooh, I'm
people
like,
get mad at me because they're like, "Have you not watched this?" And I'm like, "Nah, I watched. I was watching Halloween." And they're like, "Well, you always watch horror. Like, why don't you like anything else?" I'm like, "Yes, I love loads of stuff. I love like Hong Kong movies, and I love, action movies. I love. There's loads of like dramas and comedies that I absolutely adore. My two favorite films of all time are. Let me see the. Oh, there they are. Judgment Night and
Judgment.
Jewel.
I was about to say something. Judgment Night is underrated. Dennis Leary is an amazing villain in that fucking movie. Uh,
Unbelievable, unbelievable. And
Cuba
that was
Jr.
a
does.
real,
I'm
yeah,
telling
yeah.
you, he actually does something he does in every movie. He cries. Have you noticed that Cuba Jr. cries in every movie?
I picture Cuba being a very emotional man in real life. And he was great as OJ. He was great as OJ.
He's great as OJ.
But yeah, no, Judgment Night. I mean, it was one of those because it was released in '93. You just had that LA '92 thing, and it just was. It felt electric, and even when I watch it now, because it's mainly set in an RV and in rough streets that look the same today, I don't
Mhm.
think it's dated. Obviously, you've got '90s vibe and the fashion and things like that.
Yes.
But the soundtrack and everything, oh, man, it's So yeah, horror is my main thing, but just the two movies that struck a chord most with me, I think it's probably because when I was growing up and I was learning about films, and what got me about Judgment Night was the acting, and that was when I was before I
Amazing.
wanted to be to be a director. I really wanted to be an actor, so that got my cogs going. Um, and yeah, and Jewel, which is Steven Spielberg's first movie, which is a TV movie, so and which is massively like Hitchcock suspenseful, which is really horror, really.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, but no, I watch a lot of horror.
I watch
There's
a
a lot
lot.
of studying that goes on to make these movies. I can tell
I
you.
mean, I mean, you have to. I mean, if I told you right now, hey, I'm making a Korean drama movie, and you ask me, what's your favorite Korean drama? I said, oh, I've never seen one
You
before.
better be able to answer
You,
that. Yeah,
you would be like, what the fuck? How are you gonna make a Korean?
absolutely. For me, I can answer that, and it would be R Point. Have you seen R Point?
No,
Check it out, man. Korean horror, great movie.
I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
Korean
yeah,
horror now. By the way, I'm
yeah,
a new
yeah.
Korean horror fan, brand new Korean horror fan, like
That's cool. Yeah,
2023.
it takes some time to get into them. Because I had a mate. Still around, but an amazing mate called Zoe back from my hometown that I went to college with, and she just had an unbelievable knowledge of like Asian cinema and crazy movies. So when I went around the house, we used to watch this stuff. We watched stuff like Battle Heater, which is about a haunted radiator. It's a Japanese movie, I think. The story of Ricky O, and stuff that was just blew my mind. And I think we maybe Battle Royale or something like that. Um, and I was like, what are these films? Like, where do you find these movies? And she's like, well, they're not just like weird movies. They're Asian cinema. They're the real deal. And yeah, so I got into all that stuff a long time ago, thanks to friends that were far more cultured than I am.
Yeah. Listen, Train to Busan, I saw that finally this year, and I was like, I actually did a video. Like I said, I am so embarrassed that I've just seen this movie
Right.
recently. Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
I'm
yeah.
supposed to be a big horror fan, and
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
like one of the greatest zombie movies ever made, if not the greatest.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's some unbelievable movies out there, like yeah, Wreck and what was the other one that was out? It was amazing.
Alive.
Yeah, that is very good.
Mhm.
Do you remember that old horror movie? Well, not old, but I mean, it kind of got forgotten. It was called Host, but it was years back, and it was about a
Oh, Host.
big
Yes,
like octopus type thing, and
yes.
that had like full blown like real family drama, like
Mhm.
really quite difficult, problematic family drama, as well as like big creature effects, and
Yes,
I was like, wow, and I think that was Japanese, wasn't it, or Korean or something
yes.
like that.
I want to say it was
Um,
Japanese.
and that was like a sort of a Gojira type thing, but they don't really mentioned it much. It came and went. So
It was during the scream time.
yes, of course, yeah, yeah. when every single DVD. I've got like 100 DVDs,
It's
and they're all
literally the
like
same
moody
poster.
looking people, like in the poster, like
Yes,
what's happening. You know what I mean?
it's literally. And if you look throughout the 90s and early 2000s, every horror movie poster is the same
It's crazy,
setup.
isn't it? Yeah.
It's two people
Yeah.
and they're sitting. It's like
Yeah,
standing
yeah.
around each other. Look,
Yeah.
like
Like
it's that same look.
yeah. Let's get the cast in a dark room and just get them to look moody into the camera.
You get the
And,
Relic. I mean,
yeah.
the movie like the Relic, Species, all of them had literally the same fucking poster. The same.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy when you watch these tropes and they go through the same things over and over again. But I did like a lot of the really low budget Scream knockoffs, because there were some wonderful movies that came out, just by Charlie Band and directors like David Duchovny, and really sort of underground, directors that were really didn't have the money, but they were desperate to try and do these edgy teen whodunit type things.
Yeah.
And they're terrible. They're terrible, but they're really entertaining. You know what I mean? And
It was the time.
The teeth get worse, because when you watch all these moody teenagers in Hollywood, their teeth are always amazing. When you watch the indie movies, you can tell real life, their teeth get worse. That's why Steve Buscemi is the man. He never had his teeth done.
He said, "Fuck it."
You buy into it. You know what I mean?
Raggedy mouth.
It's all about the raggedy mouth. I mean, like, after these guys, you go like a push. Would you let George Clooney take a bite out of your sandwich? Yeah, probably. If I was really in a bad place. But Steve Buscemi, you wouldn't let him near anything. You'd be like
you don't
even a bottle of water.
Food,
like,
you feel like he talks and some spit will fall on your fucking food or something. Like, I agree.
I'm not working with Marvel. Steve Buscemi ever again? No, I'm kidding. I know. No, I love Steve Buscemi.
Me too.
But
I love him.
Yeah, but I mean, going back to like, sorry, I will leave, because I know you're trying to get
poor
rid of
Steve.
Me.
Poor Steve.
Poor Steve. But again, we said about like 90s movies, you could have a really edgy movie that could become a huge hit. I just remember looking at some like premiere photos from Scream, and I thought everyone looks really unwell. Everyone looks really gross, and you don't get that now. Like people who could be movie stars could like smoke through the whole film, and their teeth could all be yellow, and you go, yeah, I buy it. I don't care. This is real life. But now everything is really perfect, and it's almost like we're trying to be like, we don't do that anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Like, we don't even have any fat characters in horror movies anymore.
No, I know, and
like
now it's
obese
like
people.
Yeah, I know. It's like apparently
everybody's perfect and fit and in shape.
And we're not even allowed to say that we're fat. You know what I mean? It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. It's like hide them away, but also don't talk about them either. Like,
because
you know what I mean?
Because older horror movies, listen, they didn't give a fuck. They had fat people. They had Down syndrome characters. Yeah, I was trying to think of the PC word to say, but you know.
I know what you're doing.
And I mean, they had a handicap wheelchair. Like,
I was just gonna say. I mean, what? When do you see that? Like a fucking guy in a wheelchair gets a hatchet in his head, or a meat cleaver.
We should see that wheelchair. We should see the wheelchair guy a lot in the horror movies. But like, even you look at indie, even what's called horror movies, they definitely discriminate. They're definitely discriminating because we're not getting overweight people anymore in horror movies.
No,
and we're not getting the mentally challenged or disabled.
No.
I mean,
it's craziness, and also it's like we can't possibly. If it's a guy, it's different, which I find very wrong. But for a female actress to take on a lead in a movie, the producers basically say, no one is going to follow this story unless she's very good looking. So we have to 100%. Fancy her to even buy into a story. And I'm like, I mean, now and again, you get those movies that break the mold. Again, which is what scenario? Like Fargo is so good. Hey,
but in what scenario though? It's just I'm gonna get canceled for this one. But in what scenario, if you got a badass woman, right? Let's say Atomic Blonde or something like that, where she's sad. In what scenario is she actually attractive?
In what context? What you mean? Like, really, we're not bothered about her like solving the mystery. We just want to see her naked. That's
No, I'm just saying. Listen, in real life, right? Let's say real life. If there's a atomic blonde type woman, a badass assassin, is she a 10?
well,
See,
I feel like you're kind of lead me into like a difficult spot. I don't know what to say. I'm trying to figure out the question.
no, but I'm just saying. For instance, what's the name? Charisse Theron is the Atomic Blonde. Have you seen that movie?
Yes.
It's a badass. She's there's 20 men in a room. She's whipping all 20 men's ass, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Charisse Theron in real life looks like she would not even want to chip a nail. You know what I mean?
Oh yes, I get you.
But that's what I'm saying. Like they don't even put an average looking woman as the badass. It's a super hot woman.
See what you're saying.
And more than likely in real life, the super badass woman is probably average looking or not a 10. You know what I mean?
I'm not going to go down that route because like you can get cancelled, but I'm not going to. No, look, I think that there is some validity in a statement that says that a woman or anyone who spends so much time preening their looks and afraid to have a hair wrong, no, they probably wouldn't be. Yeah,
but even a man, like the movies, what are they called? Shit, with Chris Hemsworth, they're Netflix. They're great.
Yes, yeah.
Can you picture him doing anything, fighting or in the woods or getting cut or messing his hair up or anything? Come on, stop.
Absolutely not. Because most guys that are in that kind of shape, they're not aggressive. They're not good at fighting. They're it's very for themselves. I mean, even women are not that fussed about really big, muscly men. I mean, when you talk to the average person, they're like, oh, well, I don't like all that. I mean, a woman might like some muscle, but when you're like massive like that, it's almost like, who are you doing it for? You're doing it really for yourself. You know, because I mean, like, look, guys.
I just don't see a man like that being in the military. That's me. You know what I mean?
Well,
I just don't see.
You're absolutely right. How many military guys really do you see that are like ripped? You don't see many. You don't see many of them. Yeah, I mean,
no.
I mean, but no, I agree with what you're saying. I think it's wrong that they always go after like, you know, quote unquote, an attractive woman. And yeah, it would be nice to see more real characters, you know, having their day. And that's what I was saying, why I love stuff like Fargo and that. Because Frances McDormand, you are bought into her story because of her character and her acting. You're not there because like, oh, there's a new movie out. Frances McDormand is so hot. Although she is very attractive in different films.
But it's not the reason that you go.
In that film, she deliberately plays a character that is not really supposed to be that attractive, you know. I mean, again, even look at Ripley from Alien. Back in the day, I don't think that was. I think they could have got any actress they wanted for that movie, but they picked someone that really didn't become hot until way later. When you look at some of the later movies that Sigourney Weaver's done, she's toned down a lot of that sort of intensity, and she's been. I mean, even like Galaxy Quest, I have to say she was smoking hot in that film.
Yes.
I never fancied Sigourney Weaver. I love her as an actress; she's unbelievable. But in that department, she wasn't really my type. But in Galaxy Quest, I was like, wow, my God, Sigourney Weaver just looks amazing with like straightened hair. You know what I mean? And I think Linda Hamilton, you know, although she is very beautiful, she played the character like she wasn't afraid to like snap her nails.
Like she was
like smoking the cigarette right down to the end, and you were like, I would.
Like she could hang out with one of the guys, and she could be one of the guys.
Absolutely, yeah. And I do think that now a lot of that. I mean, I really, really do adore Angelina Jolie as an actress, but as Tomb Raider, she could have played it. She could have played it rough and ready because she's done that in other roles. But in Tomb Raider, they wanted her to be the sex symbol. 100%. So you were supposed to believe that Indiana Jones had been to a hairdresser, and you know what I mean. It just was silly. It was just silly. And I think it is a disservice to women.
It does, man. But it does give a service. I agree. It 100% does. All right. Well, listen, Rusty, I would love to have you back on anytime, man. This was a fun.
I'll
This
be
was
here
a
all
fun
week.
interview. If my channel is still here, by the time this interview comes out.
Of course it will be. Of course it will be.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you for coming to the Horror Realm. Get on Tubi, get on Plex, get on Amazon, all that. Please go out and check out Artifacts of Fear. All right, guys. Thank you for coming to Horror Realm. I'm Travis Bruce. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.